I'm currently taking apart the gearbox of my manual car to replace the clutch disc and pressure plate. While I'm doing this, I'll teach you a trick to increase acceleration and save fuel for life for free. This video is primarily aimed at professionals, but that doesn't mean you can't get an idea. If you have a manual car and need to replace the clutch disc and pressure plate, you'll know the secret and the steps that will make your car save fuel for life and improve its acceleration. Let me I'll explain the steps to replace the clutch disc and pressure plate, and while I'm doing this, I'll show you the trick. Go to the front right wheel and loosen the locking bolt on the nut. In some cars, it might be a rubber boot. Then put the car in fifth gear and place a stone behind the wheel to stabilize it while you loosen the CV joint nut as it's tightly tightened. Next, raise the car to its highest level and remove the tire. It's very important to return the gear selector to neutral before continuing to disassemble. Go to the right side ball joint and loosen its nut. Using the appropriate pliers, remove the ball joint from its position. Then go down to loosen the ball joint of the control arm. Using the same pliers, remove the ball joint from its mounting location and send it to a metal part. Press on the control arm to pry it out. Loosen the nut of the CV joint and remove it. Press on the outer head of the CV joint to make it retract. Pull it from the back so that the side heats up from the CV joints. In our case, removing the CV joints isn't difficult and doesn't require tools. Measure the diameter of the inner CV joint you removed. Get a pipe, a piece of cork, and a piece of wood. Tap the pipe on top of the cork until you cut a circular piece of cork. Take this piece you cut and use it to seal the joint. The location of the coupling's entry point to prevent oil leakage and to keep any dirt from entering the transmission. We do the same thing on the other side. In addition, you need to remove the fiberglass housing of the front left wheel, disconnect the battery, and remove the base underneath it to give yourself more space while removing the transmission. As you can see, it's rusty and in bad condition, and I'll fix it while I'm working now. Disconnect the reverse connector, then remove the bolt securing the lower clutch master cylinder to the transmission and engine housing. Apply slight pressure to the clutch master cylinder to remove it from its place. You'll notice that I'm reinstalling its bolts as they were, and you'll understand why in a bit. Then go to the other side of the transmission and remove the transmission lever bolt. Because the space is tight, I can't take a picture while I'm taking it apart. This is what it looks like after I took it apart and removed the end of the gear selector. Here's another connector, the speed sensor connector. I'll zoom in so you can see it. This is what it looks like after I removed it. Be careful, its location is tight and it has a tab or lock that you have to lift to be able to disconnect the connector. You can't unscrew the gearbox bolts randomly because some are long and some are short, so you'll need a hammer and a solid nail or an automatic marking tool to number the gearbox bolts. Here's a marking tool. If I zoom in, you'll see it. A marking tool means number 1. The bolt above it is 2 marking tools, so that's the second bolt, and so on. You mark all the gearbox bolts with the tool. Before you start unscrewing the bolts, you have to lower the engine to its lowest level because this will make the removal and installation process easier. The engine has to be supported or held on a support. Something I personally prefer is to lift the engine from above, or as we say, let it fly, because this gives me a lot of space under the engine and transmission. Of course, the metal I use has to be very strong, whether it's the main metal bar or the one connecting the exhaust manifold to the top metal bar, because manually lowering and lifting the transmission is a real hassle and exhausting task, and I've tried it before. That's why I made this modification so that the jack or lifter itself lifts the transmission without me having to exert any effort or tire myself out. After adjusting it in its position underneath, I let it actually lift the transmission. A tip: attach the transmission to the jack with a lifting rope because it will keep it stable on the jack while you're lowering and moving it. After lifting the transmission onto the jack, I started unscrewing all the screws around its rings. Of course, their number, size, and location vary from car to car. For the second step, be careful. There will be hidden screws under the wiring harness. There are tight spots, so loosen the screws on the plate that are hidden around the ignition gear on the engine side. Of course, you also need to remove the front mount that holds it and the engine. Remove it completely and take it out of its place. After you remove all the screws, take a large flathead screwdriver, a small bit from above and a small bit from below. Move it a little here and a little there, little by little, removing anything that might be obstructing its removal or hindering its movement. In the end, you'll find the gearbox is free from its place. At that point, it will be very easy and very neat, without any physical effort, to remove the gearbox or manual transmission from its place and take it out from under the car without any trouble. What helped me with this was that I had the engine suspended high, and the adjustment I made to the jack afterward disappears. For the disc and the clutch disc, loosen the bolts securing it to the crankshaft gear. With the last bolt, the disc and clutch disc will come out easily. To loosen the crankshaft gear bolts from the crankshaft, use a simple trick. Half-tighten one of the disc bolts and place another bolt in the nearest hole, then use a wrench to secure them. This will make it easy to loosen the bolt securing the crankshaft gear without it spinning. After the last bolt, remove the clamp you made and release the crankshaft gear. It's very important to replace any leaks, however small, in the rear crankshaft oil seal at the same time, as this is a great opportunity. Now let's start the preparation and cleaning phase before installation. First, I put the transmission in the sand, which I made a video about a month ago. I'll close the video to remove the dust, and then I'll begin the cleaning process using sandblasting. This is what the transmission looked like when I first took it out of the car, covered in oil, grease, and dirt. This is what it looks like after I cleaned it with sandblasting. Of course, all the transmission openings are well sealed so that sand doesn't get in. This is what it looked like from the back, near the speed sensor, and this is what it looks like after being thoroughly cleaned using the same method. Then we move on to the rusty battery compartment, and we use sandblasting again. This is what it looked like when I first removed it from the car. Its condition was terrible. This is what it looked like after cleaning it. I sandblasted everything, then applied a layer of quick-drying filler to both pieces. After about an hour, I painted it black, the same color as the car, and let it dry. The flame gear also needed to be sandblasted first for initial cleaning. This is what it looked like after the cleaning process was completed. After that, you need to give it a very light polish on the lathe, just enough to even out its surface without damaging it. This was what it looked like when I first removed it from the car and it was lost. This is what it looks like after cleaning and polishing it on the lathe. Now for the trick or secret that guarantees you fuel savings for life without any cost. You'll get a lathe tool, the kind they use on lathes to shape metal, and with its sharp point you'll start making intersecting circles on the surface of the flame gear, and press hard while making those cross-shaped strokes on the entire circumference of the diaphragm surface that rubs against the cylinder. I'll bring it closer so you can see the deep scratches I made. The purpose of these scratches is to create a strong bond between the cylinder and the diaphragm gear. This improves traction and acceleration, thus saving you fuel because there's no loss in the transfer of power between the engine and the transmission. Get a new clutch disc and pressure plate. Your hands shouldn't be dirty when handling or working on it. They must be clean at all times until you install and tighten it. Keep in mind that the pressure plate will have the direction marked. Here it says gearbox side, meaning the side facing the transmission, not the engine. Wash the disc and pressure plate with a fast-acting disinfectant spray. If you don't have one, wash them very well with thinner, using the same method you used for the clutch. The flame gear is made in the disc or clutch. Roughen its surface with a lathe tool in intersecting circles. Wash all the screws you removed while working. It's best to clean them thoroughly using gasoline, thinner, or any solvent that doesn't cause corrosion. You'll notice after 10 minutes of cleaning that the thinner I used on the ultrasonic was in very poor condition. If you have a wire brush, either manual or motorized, clean all the screws and their threads. This is what all the screws I removed while working looked like before cleaning, and this is what they look like after washing and cleaning them thoroughly. Now for the installation steps. Of course, you should have cleaned this whole area well from any dirt, but don't get gasoline or thinner on the rear crankshaft oil seal. Place the flame gear in its place and secure it with 1 or 2 screws initially, and the same procedure we used when disassembling it. We tighten one of the disc bolts in its place, half tightening it, and another large bolt in the nearest hole. Then we loosen the bolts we temporarily installed and apply Loctite 43. We repeat this process with all the bolts. When tightening them, we must use the torque specified in the car's manual and tighten them using a scissor-like method, as you will see. We remove the 2 bolts we used for securing them. We take the disc and the pressure plate and make sure the pressure plate is facing correctly. We hold them in place by hand while we install their bolts. This is a preliminary installation because the next important step is to center the pressure plate exactly in the middle. I'll give you a close look so you understand that the pressure plate must be perfectly centered before installing the transmission. There is a special tool for this, but it's not readily available and is expensive, so the easiest solution is to measure the internal diameter of the cylinder and use a metal axe with a diameter less than 0.5 millimeter to center the cylinder. That's it, you've made sure the cylinder is centered to the exact millimeter. Now loosen each screw individually and apply Loctite 43. After applying Loctite to all the screws, tighten them to the correct torque specified in the manual. You can also tighten them using a scissor wrench or a tool that performs the same function. Remove the axle and go to the gearbox to change the bearing. Loosen the screw that secures the bearing pressure arm and pull out the old bearing. It should come out easily. Then clean the area very well from any dust or dirt, dry it thoroughly, and apply a very light layer of grease. There's no need to use a lot of grease. Apply grease to the outer ring of the bearing on all sides. There's no need to grease the bearing itself since it comes with its own grease. Use only the grease that's left on your finger to run over the gear. The gearbox that will engage with the cylinder, don't use too much grease. Installing the bearing couldn't be easier because it has a recess that fits into the pressure arm. Make sure it's free to move, then tighten the bolt back into place. The gearbox is now ready for installation. The modification I made it much easier, eliminating the hassle of manual work. Installing the gearbox on the engine at this stage requires caution and care. Check what's preventing the gearbox from returning to its position because you might need to move it slightly to the right, then to the left, then up, then down. If anything is obstructing it, remove it so you can install it correctly. Generally, this is the most difficult stage of the whole job. Once you've finished it and installed the gearbox, everything else is easy. The first two bolts you tighten must be facing each other to secure the gearbox to the engine. The rest isn't worth photographing because it's obvious. The last thing you remove from the transmission is the first thing you install. The transmission remains raised on the jack so you can install the rear mounting bolts and the front mounting bolts. After you're sure the transmission and engine are securely mounted on their brackets, you remove the metal bar that was holding the engine in place and continue reattaching everything you removed. When installing the CV joints, you need to tap them with moderate force so they engage properly. After installing the CV joints and the rest of the suspension system, check if the transmission needs oil and add it. Then go to the clutch pedal and recalibrate it to the new settings. Like and share the video because the installation details and method will definitely benefit many people. We'll continue together in the next video, God willing.